work, but like in different structures you have the different acts invoking the different scenes. So in one of those performances he would have also built another miniature Lucknow in the middle of Lucknow.
Help with the link, getting to the website where we have the pictures. You do? Have you figured out the scanner app on your phone?
So I can scan the camera and then
Google and say
Yeah.
okay, I have to
Okay.
We needed a system today.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Welcome to yet another, thing. We call this the Lost Legacy Trail. My name is Sohail. I represent Break Free Trails. If some of you some of you guys know us already, some of you may not. So we are a very smallish, organization that conduct heritage tours around Calcutta. This is Soumyadeep. He runs his own thing, more into art and more, the high culture stuff. Heritage and Arts Walk, Kolkata. And together we've kind of teamed up because we have a common love, common passion, which is Awadh, Wajid Ali Shah, and everything that comes with it. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
and I think this is the first time we're doing a joint walk together.
doing a
Because
joint
individually
collab,
done.
okay? In the
This
age
is
of
the first
collab,
time
we are doing
kind of,
collab.
doing
So collabs are press.
So
All right, and so ground rules. I think we managed to send you some instructions. I hope you all got it. In case you did not, just to run through it again. He mentioned it already. It's a very busy street.
hello.
Not much space to walk around. Try to keep us in your sight. Any one of us. We'll have someone at the back maybe as a wingman. Okay. I think it's going to be poor guy Doro.
He's photographing.
Oh, he's photographing. Okay. He's there.
We are all slow walkers.
ठीक है. So in case you fall behind and all, just try to look for a big bunch of people looking out of place. That's us. Okay. And
Also because like it's going to be a relatively shorter walk with a lot of people, so some very obvious questions like did Wajid Ali Shah invent biryani or how many wives did he
We are not taking those questions.
We are not taking like these few questions, so yeah, might as well.
Yeah, but having said that, during when either one of us are talking, you want to interrupt us, ask us something, or you have some curiosity, anything that you want to ask, don't do that.
Right now.
I'm so sorry. You do not wait for us to stop. We will not stop. Just barge in. Okay? Ask. No? Let's start?
Yeah.
Chalo.
Colonial street এখানে বলবো?
এখানে বলবো? বেতন এটা?
ঠিক আছে,
Hello.
Hey, what up?
Yeah, hey.
দেখতে আছে ওই থাইল্যান্ড তো ধরে রাখাই
Just you have space behind, so you can get a little back so that these guys can also join you.
কেমন আছে
All here? कोई पीछे छूट तो नहीं गया? ढूंढ रहा होगा परेशान? अच्छा. This is, you could say, like a first stop, proper stop. Okay, but where are we? Why are we stopping here in Orphan? But if you all shift your gaze to that, not that cart, but what stands behind the cart, next to the blue car, I think you'll get an idea of what, okay, that immediately connects. How many of you actually been to Lucknow? Most
of it.
There are some who have not, never. You guys have never been to Lucknow?
Hopefully after this.
Astaghfirullah.
It's exhibition. You were supposed to plan a lot.
And
Extend the walk to till Lucknow.
hopefully we will someday.
Now has to go to the Lal Biryani.
So that is your quintessential Awadhi architecture, okay, the whole floral pattern, the arch, because right next to it, which is actually hidden from view now, is remains of an Imambada, okay, and I'll come to the Imambada later. But first, how do we start? You want to start with the
Colonial history and
go ahead. So I think let's.
No, you start with the colonial history. I'll
Okay.
go with the Mughal.
So we're gonna do this often.
Yeah,
Like,
like-
tu bolega, main bolega?
Yeah.
Because we are not organized.
पहले आप that
We are not organized, okay? And yeah. So a bit of context, okay? Very short, very quick, right? Wajid Ali Shah, Awadh, thoda sa, we'll go back in history. I think for those who know, very good. They can jump in. Please join in and share your thoughts, okay? As we go along. So you see, it all starts with, Awadh as a kingdom, as an independent kingdom, came up in about early 1800s, okay? The very first Nawab, which is recorded to be, is Saadat Ali Khan, okay? It's Saadat Ali Khan, whose family comes from Iran in Nishapur, okay, Isfahan basically, and they come to India. His father was already in India. He was, he was a military general, a very successful military general in the army of Aurangzeb, who was one of the Mughal kings, which today we are trying to forget, okay?
You mean 1700?
1700s, yeah,
1720, yeah, 18th century.
Yeah, 18th century.
Early 18th century. So 1920, which is Aurangzeb is long gone, and and everything has happened. Wahan par the Delhi king Mughals are like, they are reducing, they are shrinking. Yeah, very soon they'll be just called kings of Delhi. Naib states, we all know the word Nawab, right? Do you really know what it means? Naib, and Naib se aata hai Nawab. Okay. Any guesses? It basically means local governor, okay, provincial governor, okay, someone who's been sent to govern a province under a high king. So the Nawabs all come under the high king, which is the Delhi king, okay.
So essentially in 18th century what's happening at this point is, once the central power is weakening, the prime ministers, especially after the Nadir Shahi invasion in the 1730s, yeah, that's again a little later, the kingdoms of Hyderabad and the Nizam of Hyderabad, as well as the Nawab of Awadh
And Bengal.
So they become like prime ministers of the larger central state, and they themselves in a certain way grow as independent kingdoms individually, and that itself starts like a migration of, not only in terms of culture, of like different artists and painters coming into these different courts, but also a larger transfer of power. And again, parallelly coming to the 18th century context of this city, where we stand right now in Garden Reach, is where sort of was the place where most of the lawyers from colonial Calcutta would retire, and their houses, these large houses, which they would now call bungalows, the Bangla style houses, which would combine both Indo-Saracenic architecture as well as like European elements, and together, and would sort of do like sort of have dream houses here. And
Yeah,
the
right
memoirs
here
of-
he means right here.
right here.
So we'll come to that, I think.
This was
Garden
yeah.
Beach later, right?
So this would be like a soft spot for the British, where like it would be a very special place for them to retire to.
He mentioned Nadir Shahi. Okay, Nadir Shah. Nadir Shah ने क्या किया था? Any guesses? He had attacked Delhi in 1739, ransacked it, and it's today recorded as the whole attack is seen as one of the worst phases of Delhi's history. Okay, and Kohinoor and all of that episode जो है, ठीक है? Around that time, the Mughal prime minister, rather you could say the chief minister, not the prime minister, someone who was just next to the king in terms of administration, was also the Nawab of Awadh. He was actually not the son of Saadat Ali Khan, he was his son-in-law, because Saadat didn't have any sons. Okay, he got his daughter married to a very able guy. He is more popular in Delhi actually than he is in Lucknow. Any guesses? Safdarjung, exactly. Safdarjung Hospital and all of that, okay? So Safdar, and his tomb, of course, in Delhi. So, and then it kept on. Now, if you all go to your, the thing I've just mentioned, you see Awadh and the kingdom, where is it? Where does it start from? which city do we associate Awadh with today? Lucknow, but that is not where it started from. Faizabad. Okay, ever heard of it?
But here now he comes with his last retirement, like pre-retirement project of somehow coming to a logical conclusion as to why the new Nawab should be deposed. And the resident before him, who was strangely enough called Shakespeare, was also not very happy with the fact that a Nawab was involved in terms of art making and was involved so heavily into this. So it would stand because they would, come to symbolize his power. But again, the structures that they don't interfere with or don't demolish end up being these religious structures or the structures of places of burial. So this is again the House of Salvation, really, like hugely significant, and also with the coming of this population, the processions of Muharram come to take, like,
বলে দিই আমরা ঢুকছি সবাই ওখানে দাঁড়াতে বলো অলরাইট Baitul Nijat the Imambara it was called Baitul Nijat okay Bait could be mean it would be in a house ul Nijat it's Nijat का मतलब पता है
Salvation.
yeah, exactly.
ठीक है बचपन में मेरी मम्मी मुझे बड़ा हुआ मैं सुनते सुनते या अल्लाह इससे निजात मिल जाए मुझे ठीक है लिटरली ठीक है हर बच्चा सुनता है ये हमारे घरों में ठीक है ना निजात मिल जाए इससे ठीक है सो या निजात दैट्स हाउ आई लर्न द वर्ड निजात ठीक है इट्स रूटेड इन माय वोकैब सो बैतुल निजात that was part of the sultan or the badshah's personal space, so it was often referred to as his personal imambara. Okay, Baitul Nijat, where his family members, himself, direct immediate members used to go for ziyarat. Okay, what's ziyarat? It's basically pilgrimage, loosely translated. Okay, now we come to the imambaras. If you go to Lucknow, you'll see all the imambaras there. We also have imambaras. We've had imambaras in Bengal already, mind you. In Murshidabad, there are imambaras bigger than the famous imambara of Lucknow in Murshidabad. Okay, now the whole imambara and the whole culture of ziyarat and how does it come up? It comes up because to address a very common, not common, but a very special need and requirement, which is what?
Offering prayers.
No.
Gathering.
No, not really. So you see, imambara serve the purpose of, someone said gathering, yeah, because during Muharram, now I said during Muharram, how many actually got that during Muharram? Because Muharram is, we know date, a day of Muharram, when, but I said during Muharram, which means what? Because Muharram is actually the month, and the day which is marked in the calendar is the 10th day of Muharram, the day of Asur Daswi. Okay, Muharram marks the month. Okay, it's as per the Islamic calendar. Okay, the Hijri calendar. When there was this whole episode. We have a very bloody history of succession of the Khalifa. Okay, happening right after peace be upon him, Muhammad's death. Okay, and yeah, so and basically that's where also two broad factions of Islam start to come out. So you see the Awadh kingdom, the Awadh royal family, and a lot of people in Lucknow were actually coming from the Shia clan. Okay, they were Shia Muslims, although India is predominantly Sunni Muslims, the others. Okay, so and there has always been this tussle, okay, unhappy tussle between the two. Now imambaras, you would find most of them set up and run and function by Shias, because the Shia Muslims, for them Muharram is a very important month. Okay, because, and it's not a celebration, mind you, because who they saw as the next Khalifa, okay, Hassan, was martyred on the 10th day. So the 10th day of Muharram is a day of mourning. The entire month is a month of mourning. We usually as Muslims don't really keep our weddings or any such things during the month of Muharram. We avoid. Okay? So that's Muharram. And of course, because in Shia culture, especially in India, now this is where the Indian context comes in. In India, the whole thing gets evolved into, well, guess what? Thanks to our own culture of art and literature and all of music and everything, Muharram kind of gave birth to a lot of practices in India, and also in Iran they were there, okay, but in India it took a different form, okay. So we have majlis. What's a majlis? It's just a gathering.
Exactly, it's a
okay?
gathering.
मजलिसें होती हैं मुहर्रम के महीने में, ठीक है, and then नौहे पढ़े जाते हैं. Ever heard the word नौहा? Hindustani, written in the Arabic script, the Urdu script, and ज़बान तो एक ही है, जिस ज़बान में मैं बात कर रहा हूँ. ये उर्दू भी है, हिंदी भी है, बट हम इसको हिंदी में भी लिख सकते हैं, उर्दू में भी लिख सकते हैं, है ना? That it's not two languages, it's one language. Okay? Acha, are we all in? Okay, we're inside this little beauty, we call it Kasrul Buka Imambada. Okay, Kasrul Buka Imambada. This is also officially part of the Sultanabad Trust, which is the trust that takes care of whatever remains. You see, you will now realize that, today, not surprisingly, the only structures that remain are the religious ones. Everything else, as we will learn, has been stripped away, destroyed, and no remains of it are there. Okay, we can only reimagine it. Okay, which is what we try to do on our tours. We help you reimagine it. Okay, in your minds. So this is Kasrul Buka, and the layout is very standard. If you go to any Imambada, more or less, you will find the same imagery, symbolism, and which connects with whole Muharram culture. Okay, the whole history of Muharram, the month. I mean the day of Ashur and the battle which was fought. So you have this room for people to gather. You have the the steps for the Imam to basically climb up, because we are talking, this is from the 1860s. Okay, we don't have actual dates of construction, so we keep it to between 1861, 62, 63, 64. Okay, around that time when this came up. Secret खोलेंगे. But अभी के लिए मिर्जा साहब, आप सभी इन्हें मिर्जा साहब कहकर तशरीफ इन्हें एड्रेस करेंगे, और आदाब कहे बिना बात नहीं करेंगे इनसे, ठीक है? और ये छोटे मिर्जा साहब हैं.
और एक और बात है, ये जो है कसरुल बुका, ये पहला इमाम बाड़ा था.
जी.
मटियाबुरुज का सबसे पहला इमाम बाड़ा है.
और ये आई थिंक जनाना इमाम बाड़ा भी कहा जाता है, बिकॉज लेडीज यूज्ड टू प्रेफर हियर. सो
जंगल से मेरा ज्यादा ट्रेक हो नहीं है. ये हिस्ट्री का दलदल है.
बिल्कुल जरूरी है स्टडी से गुजरना.
जो इस पे गुजरेगा वो भी निकल पाएगा.
Across this adventure, but in this at the same time, I think it makes a good sort of a experience, because it actually tells you about the destruction, what you just walked through rather. Okay, and we are pretty much in the middle of it, you could say. Was actually what we see as these godowns, these rundown warehouses, okay, was actually the official, the main Sultan Khana, the main residence of Wajid Ali Shah. Right here. This is all that.
Okay. The house that he builds, like several sections. So then, like the palace essentially. So that would have been again along the river.
Go to the link. Can you point out which number is Sultan Khana?
Which?
I will take it now. So not many pictures survive of it, okay, but some do. Okay, so you see, okay, Sultan Khana, okay. So this is after 1859, when he is released from Fort William, okay. He ultimately accepts the offer. I don't need it, thanks. He ultimately accepts the fact that this is where he would end up living a lot, most of his life, eventually his entire life. He lived in Calcutta for guess how many years?
31.
Someone said 30.
31.
Exactly. 30 is good. 32, I think precisely. Kamran bhai will know the exact number.
More than half of his life.
Till his 60s,
Exactly.
so almost like
the same.
symmetrical.
Yeah.
So essentially, he lived half his life in Lucknow and then half his life in Metiaburuz. So it's almost
Calcutta.
exactly. So it's almost like symmetrically divided into these two halves. So this would have, again, like Sohail mentioned, would have been roughly around where his Sultan Khana would have been. So it was again divided into several sections, and one of them would have been Azad Manzil, or his infamous menagerie, which was, like one of his most important, like very close to his heart as he settled here. Because despite losing his, despite his kingship being taken away, the part that remains with him is his zoo. So he has to sell a part of his zoo already while he's shifting from Lucknow to here, and then the agents in between, like this person called Edward Blythe and several others who get in between, they sort of do this thing where they charge him double the amount to buy the same animals that he sells in Lucknow, to buy them here again. Becomes a kind of both a sense of curiosity for the British as well as something that they see as a potential threat. So one
And
very
in some
spectacular,
cases some trouble as well.
and some trouble as well. So you have like open snakes wandering around, and tigers who are according to them.
He had giraffe. He had rhinoceros. Not just one type, but he also had like a
Different
Javan
kinds.
rhinoceros, of course, the one-horned Indian rhinoceros. That this is the river Hooghly, just in case you're wondering. Okay. No, actually someone had asked me at one point in time, kabhi kisi tour pe, is this Hooghly? I told him no, it's not. Because what sort of a question is that?
The garden reached.
Yeah. So we are actually, ever wondered why we call it garden reach?
Like, why is it called a reach?
A garden reach. So garden reach.
नहीं garden
एकदम सही बोला भैया, लेकिन ये झूठ भी है, ठीक है?
Why is the place called?
But why do we have the word garden reach?
Definitely not reachable now, but
So you see, we talked about, if you go to the link, you'll find some pictures by Daniel, and there is a picture by Fraser. So I mentioned 2, and I think the picture number 2 or 4,
the one that you have right after.
So then there is another picture of Daniel, okay, which says garden reach. You see, he talked, Soumyadeep mentioned about how this place was a downtown for Calcutta, okay, downriver literally, and this is where the British in the 18th century, by middle of 18th century, started escaping the chaos of the main town, started building for themselves these palatial houses, okay, which later came to be known as bungalows, Bangla style houses. Basically having a big open courtyard in the front leading to the river with gardens, and then usually a 2-storied structure, high ceilings to allow for ventilation on both ends. That's the bungalow, the typical standard bungalow, okay. So bungalow comes from the Bangla style body, okay, Bangla body basically. So, and this is exactly all this around here where where they started building these houses, and they called it garden reach. Now even before garden reach, that's a very British name for the place. The place had already had a name. In fact, it still has a name. We are where, and which is what we call this place today. What is it?
A tower made of mud.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Literally a literal
Metiaburuz. So it goes back to 1500s when during the time of the Baru Bhuiyas and all, where there used to be two towers across the river. There used to be a garment's hut at that side, Betor Howrah, okay, and there used to be basically garrison of soldiers guarding and just kind of securing the marketplace. So this used to be a very busy place with a lot of small boats, big boats, all coming here for the trade.
And in fact, even right now you would see these large vessels sort of pass by. Like,
so this is the south. That way is the sea. This is where the city is. This is upriver. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we come to Metiaburuz. Now we come to 18th century. They renamed the place Garden Reach, because reach is actually a marine word. It basically means the straight portion of a river between two bends.
So you have like this bend on
there
this
is a
side
bend
and
over
the
here,
other bend.
and then the river bends towards the city somewhere over there, right ahead. If you actually don't do that, but you will, and there is a bend, okay? And this is like a straight portion, straight stretch. So that's actually called in marine terminology a reach. So garden reach, okay?
And right across again.
Yeah, what
we
my
have-
question was, what is it? What do we have
We
across
have
the
right
road?
across the river. I mean,
Take guesses.
yeah.
Don't
What is this
cheating,
spoiler?
okay?
গার্ডেনের নামটা বলতে বলো লোক
Nah.
কোম্পানি বাগান
Okay, how many? Okay, once again. So what we have across, you see the wooded, shaded area, the leafy part. That is the botanical gardens.
and is that the Roxburgh?
That is. That is the Roxburgh House.
That is.
How many of you know about Roxburgh House? But we'll not talk about it, ma'am, because
Yeah,
we'll
we'll-
digress. We'll go somewhere else.
So again, like I
Now,
said,
the incident.
so So the 11th image in the file is one of the parts of the Sultan Khanas. So like I said, like the Azad Manzil had these open animals. So two of these tigers who escaped, one of them was shot down here, and this other tigress that manages to somehow cross the river and land up on the other side ends up terrorizing this village. So in the morning, suddenly the officers start sending telegrams to each other, and there's this panic that there's a tiger on the loose, and this tigress ends up attacking two Germans, which becomes this huge issue because like now
So
Europeans have
imagine
been
it was a
attacked.
January morning. Imagine January in Calcutta. The mist always hangs over the river, reducing visibility. And this poor guy, and there was also a Mali basically who also got attacked. They're out and about, just taking a stroll maybe. A lovely morning, lovely weather. The German, lovely weather, okay. And then he sees this strange beast. Probably that's the first time he saw a tiger, okay. And he's a very young dude who was actually studying botany here. Okay, he was a young botanist who was working for the company, and this was the company bagan then, okay. So imagine coming across a tiger on your
early morning, yeah, and
and jumping at you.
And even worse for the people who didn't see the tiger, because then you have the panic that you might run into a tiger, and you definitely don't want
was a
that.
bird, it was a plane
And
sort of a
so these
situation.
telegrams are now running about, and in fact, like one of the officers who gets attacked also is informed about the tiger, but it ends up being a situation which is
The tiger
suddenly
was shot down 2 days later by, I think, one of the guys in the Howrah police. Whatever you could take in while we were walking in, but right behind most of you.
Very unconventional as well, because now
Yeah.
the extravagance of architecture that would have preceded, say, when he was making Kaiserbagh in Lucknow, which would have been way more ornamental. Here things are minimalized, and his taste in architecture is changing over time. So now you don't have a dome in this structure, and
This is one of the few
This is one of the few
mosques that
mosques
you will
which-
come across without any domes. There are no domes or minars, which are very common nowadays, right?
so it's one of those rare structures which also sort of, you could as well argue that in his meager pension he has to restrict his certain his expenditures, but it also has to do with his tastes as he grows older, because now even the clothes that he wears are very minimal and very toned down. So there's of course the famous story that when the first stone that was being laid out for the mosque,
Who has not missed a prayer in the last 3 months? The declaration, the announcement lay unattended, unclaimed for at least 2 or 3 months. No one came forward. Meaning which, no one was very sure if they've actually not missed any prayer in the last 3 months. Ultimately, it was the king who did the job. Now, so we've been talking about
unlike like the popular belief that like he was a deviant in a way and sort of like a debauch, he was
Also
ironically like a very early riser. Like he'd wake up at 4 o'clock, and he was a very pious Muslim who would very
Never miss his
devotedly
prayers.
never miss his prayers.
How are you a
Never
pious
drink
Muslim?
wine. Never drink
Never
wine.
touched wine.
Never touched wine.
How are you a
and
pious Muslim? Well, what is the basic is that you never miss your prayers. The 5 prayers a day. That's your farz, okay? And then there are other things. You don't touch it. The devil touching wine is actually an interesting point. Namaz kahin bhi padh sakte hain. But masjid is purpose built to allow people to gather and offer prayers, okay? Jahan Jummah Jamaat ho sakti hai, and this is where people come still, okay? So aaj ki date mein koi bhi aata hai, whoever comes first lights up the fan and all. They now have a, I think, team of people who look after it, and it's maintained and the Kamran set for prayer. So you'll always find ablutions, basically is what we call them in English, wazu khana, but nowadays of course the taps have overtaken the traditional wazu khana. But if you go to an old mosque like Nakhota Mosque, still has a very beautiful wazu khana, you know, where the हाँ ठीक है हाँ ठीक है शुक्रिया और वैसे भी हमको पहचानते हैं खोल लें इमरान हाँ वो तो very quickly we just passed by the hallmark, the you know, the end all of everything, the Sultanabad Imambara, but right next to it is this cute little place. It's called the Umda Mahal Imambara. Umda Mahal, named after one of his wives. Yeah, okay. Umda Mahal, Soumyadeep.
So Umda Mahal again was one of the Muta wives whom he marries in Lucknow itself. And Ishqnama, this book he writes on his life at the Ishqnama.
It's there in the. You have a picture of it on your.
We have a picture of it. Yeah. So Umda Mahal is one of the Muta wives he marries in Lucknow itself. So while he's writing the book Ishqnama, he's 26 years, and he mentions that Umda Mahal उनकी सीन 28 साल की थी, and she had entered the service of Nasiruddin Hyder at this point, who is the king at this point. And at this juncture there is no chance of Wajid Ali Shah becoming the king, because his father Amjad Ali is not the king yet. So he's not the Wali Ahad at this point. He's not the crown prince yet. So he says he gets very fascinated by this elderly woman. She's 28 and he's much younger than her. And he spots her at Nasiruddin Hyder's service, and he falls in love and madly in love with her, and they that continues for a while.
I mentioned wear easy to take off walk-in shoes. This was the reason.
This is the image. This is an image from Ishqnama. This is one of the pages. So he kind of writes this elaborate, illustrated story on his love life. And it's kind of very humorous, but it's also very also it's kind of self-depreciating humor. And Wajid Ali Shah,
that's Metiaburuz
and then
for you.
these two start having an affair. And then one day, of course, like this triangle sort of gets so complicated that he says something
I'll
like,
wager if you've seen this work anywhere else. This is not Meena.
what are you doing? Like, you're playing around with my brother and I. So who are you really in love with? And she says, of course I'm in love with you. I don't even know your brother. And then he goes and sort of interrogates his brother, and he goes like, she says she doesn't know you. And
he had an African word, sorry.
no, he had several.
That's it.
I mean,
There is no parallel to it. So when we tried to look for something similar elsewhere, I've had people who very well travelled, and even they were like,
this again would
This gentleman, the descendant, has refused that they have any African blood.
actually it's better not to bring that up because I had it's a very sensitive.
Of my writing was basically the Africans in India.
Okay.
And then I came across all this.
Right. So Diyanat Dawla, who was also one of his ministers, was from an African descent, and she was a transgender person who was once you grew very wealthy over time. She was the one who actually
moving out because now
the one who actually managed the entire
at the
household together.
Crafts that came in with them and things like that.
Yes, of course. So the stitching, like the tailor community that came in, they started their own influence on the clothing in the culture. Yeah, exactly. And also early, like the 18th century, 19th century, early 19th century as well. like it would usually be uncut cloth. So you'd have like a pottobostro or ongobostro, and which would not necessarily be stitched up. So so that sort of changes with this, like that sort of. So this is the exhibition.
Right, nice.
So I'll do a quick walkthrough of the
We
works.
can take off our shoes first.
Do you want to do the walkthrough inside the Imambara or?
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Shukma, she is Pallavi Chakravarti. She
Hello.
is a Kathak connoisseur and
Hello.
she has done a piece on Metiaburuz.
Oh, that I would love to.
The way
Right.
I saw it on Shruti's
Okay. The scroll, and the third part is the zoo that you have on the other side. So I start this as like his life being told as a tale by two fish. The fish are like the emblem of Awadh. So these two fish tell the tale of the life of Wajid Ali Shah, which was almost symmetrically divided into like 32 brief years in Lucknow and 32ish years in Metiaburuz itself. So this is the Lucknow fish that recalls the stories of Wajid Ali Shah's life. So it's again like the birth of Wajid Ali Shah, and unlike most of these stories, he was born under unlike the very cliche hero stories, he was born under inauspicious stars, to negate which his mother Malika Kishwar, the queen mother, just starts dressing him up as a yogi, and that eventually over the years becomes a thing fascinating to him to be dressed up as a Hindu yogi. And as an adult later, connecting the stories of Majnu and Laila, he one day like tears his clothes apart and he says that, you know, like I would dress up as a yogi, and he starts the Yogi Mela, which would be again around the same time of Shravan. And again the time at which when he's born is back a few decades earlier, almost like in the 1700s, almost about I think like 50-60 years earlier, where another deposed Nawab was also jailed, who was Wazir Ali Khan, whose portrait you have on the right end of this line, the right side, and the person in the middle. So Wazir Ali Khan, who was briefly also the Nawab of the king of Awadh, had rebelled against the British.
He was for a very brief time.
For a very brief time.
1 year, not even 2 years.
So he eventually ends up being taken as a hostage by the British and being put at Fort William. Even though Wajid Ali Shah, when he's taken under house arrest, he's not literally chained or anything, but of course he's put under several restrictions. But the fact that once he was here, and as Kamran Bhai had mentioned, the fact that, you know, he would be here inside the fort would of course invoke to him, someone who's very acquainted with the family history of this moment in history where one of his ancestors would have been in a similar position in the 1700s. Work, but like in different structures, you have the different acts invoking the different scenes. So in one of those performances, he would have also built another miniature Lucknow in the middle of Lucknow. So the fact that he, you know, already builds a city within a city, which sort of exists as a fantasy, is only, it again kind of becomes this real and fantasy world that he again decides to rebuild here. And this again becomes this grand play as if he is directing once he is settling down here. So Abdul Halim Shah, who's about like 9-10 years old now, and also despite the fact that, you know, now the British were very conscious about taking away his kingship, the population from Awadh, the population from Lucknow, they migrated, almost like him as a magnet and him at the focal point. This culture sort of develops around him, and this is what again I tried to represent. And again, like I said, the Muharram as an event, which is of course upcoming, and I mean like better people to talk about this really. I'm in no position. So he would, you know, again like I said, like the British would be very curious as to how spectacular these Muharram processions would be, and he would lead these. He would lead the processions with him playing the hand drums, and again a scene from that. And then again we come several decades down when he is an older king, and like he's an elderly person, and now he has trouble walking on his feet. and he now has to be carried on a sedan, on a palki by 8 bearers, and him being, like I mentioned, the zoo at the walk, so his walk, his zoo, his menagerie being a favorite of his, the Calcutta Zoological Society almost contemporarily, parallelly is developing at this point. So he decides to visit the Zoological Society, and the superintendent of the Zoological Society at this point is this Indian called Ram Brahmo Channal, who is now in charge. And when Wajid Ali Shah visits, the young Ram Brahmo Channal is walking. So he says, I have
That's the hourly bell.
Yeah. We're lucky to see like the maximum, the 12 o'clock one. Actually. So, yeah. So Rupendra Krishnadev says that I'll have another pun, and he has another pun. And then now he's going back, like he's going back through the Khidr. Animals that he got were not necessarily all spectacular ones. So there was this rhinoceros that he buys, which is not the Indian rhinoceros, but rather the Javan version of the female rhinoceros. And Javan rhinoceroses have like smaller horns, and female Javan rhinoceroses have even smaller horns. So this Javan rhinoceros ends up living 10 years in Metiaburuz, and then after about 10 years, it's bought by that same Ram Brahmo Channal person, and it's taken to the Calcutta Zoo, where it lives the remainder of its life. There was of course the snake section, which Kamran Bhai had very courteously. So these 4 are from archival photographs. So there was again an open snake area, which would be something like this. This is from a photograph by this person called Fritz Karp, which is thankfully shared by Kamran Bhai. So it would have been something like this. So like a man-made structure. That's part of the Sultan Khana. So Fritz Karp, this German photographer, comes and photographs different sections of. And there was so the snakes would be in the open. There, like other than all these people who were shifting all the way from Lucknow to Metiaburuz, there was also a giraffe which sort of makes it to the Noah's Ark and ends up with the Nawab, like not literally with him, but ends up from all the way from Lucknow to Metiaburuz. And this lone giraffe, possibly at the after a certain point, ends up finding a partner